night. Republican kryptonite.
This has been a very, very challenging experience for all of us.
Gaza's most dangerous game. And life in a conservative ghetto.
I think the liberal experiment is California. It is the canary in the coal mine for the rest of the country about what not to become.
The White House has confirmed that President Trump had a second undisclosed conversation with Russian President Vladimir Putin during the G20 summit. Putin's translator was present, but Trump wasn't accompanied by any staff during the talk. The White House says it was a brief conversation at the end of the dinner. The June 2016 meeting at Trump Tower had an eighth member, Ike Kavaladze, a US-based employee of a Russian real estate company. He was sent as a representative by Russian businessman EREZ Agalarov, who helped arrange the meeting with Donald Trump Jr. The president's son admitted that he attended based on promises of receiving damaging information about Hillary Clinton. Palestinians who refused to pass through new checkpoints and metal detectors installed at Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem opted to pray outside in protest. The security measures were put in place by Israel following a Friday shootout near the mosque that left 2 Israeli policemen and 3 Arab Israeli gunmen dead. Some feared the heightened security could upset the delicate balance in an area that's home to sacred sites for both Muslims and Jews. Hundreds of delivery drivers protested in London today, demanding a stronger government response to a wave of recent acid attacks. Last week, 5 drivers on mopeds were hit with acid in a span of 90 minutes. At least 2 of the victims were delivery drivers. Police have charged a 16-year-old for allegedly carrying out the attacks. Saudi Arabian officials have arrested a woman who appeared in a video posted online wearing a miniskirt and crop top in public. Saudi conservatives say she flagrantly violated the kingdom's strict dress code for women. But online, commenters called her brave and noted that Melania and Ivanka Trump recently appeared in public in the country without abayas.
American people have said loudly and clearly, stop, scrap this bill and start over.
I suggest that we pull Obamacare out by the roots.
The greatest threat to Medicare is Obamacare, and we're going to stop it.
And we will repeal every word of Obamacare.
And I think you'll see Republicans come forward with a plan to replace Obamacare.
We have to repeal Obamacare, and it can be replaced with something much better for everybody.
We will move right after the first of the year on an Obamacare replacement.
May not be as quick as we had hoped, but it's going to happen.
Yikes. So understandably, Democrats and progressives are enjoying their delicious schadenfreude over the demise of the Republican health care plan. But they may only get a brief moment or two before health care becomes their problem again.
I'm not going to own it. I can tell you the Republicans are not going to own it. We'll let Obamacare fail, and then the Democrats are going to come to us and they're going to say, how do we fix it? How do we fix it?
Republicans ran against Obamacare very effectively for years. But then they had no plan to fix it. And so they face-planted once they actually had the chance to do something.
It's pretty clear that there are not 50 Republicans.
Democrats have been united so far in their opposition to Republican efforts. And they're going to make every Republican they possibly can answer for those efforts in 2018. But do Democrats have a plan? Kurt Schrader's a moderate Democrat from Oregon. Not the expensive coffee and ironic facial hair part of Oregon, but the swing district unironic facial hair part of Oregon. He says he has a plan. He drafted it with some other moderate Democrats, and he thinks that some Republicans might sign on to it too. I asked him about his plan. And I also asked him who he thinks the public will blame if the healthcare system falls apart.
The president says Democrats own it because Democrats passed it. Is that true?
Let's see. They control the presidency, the Senate, and House of Representatives. I say that's a pretty crummy government that you voted for if you can't get anything across the finish line. I think, Democrats were not perfect. We've got our own flaws. I get that. But we actually get stuff done, and we actually care about people. I think this next election, if I was a Republican, I'd be pretty worried.
I mean, is there anything that is a good sort of quick summary of your plan?
Oh, the goal of the Solutions Not Problems plan is to stabilize and improve the individual marketplace. That's really it. And it means making sure the premiums come down, means the deductibles come down to something that is actually affordable to people that don't have a job or aren't on Medicare or aren't on Medicaid.
And in order to get your Republican colleagues to buy onto something like this, they have to believe that they are going to own what happens next.
But they've got nothing to talk about when they go back home. I think it's horrible for those guys. Democrats, when we go back home in this August, I'm going to be talking about we're going to fix the individual marketplace. We're going to make sure the Medicaid stays in place, a huge successful program across the country. And I think that's a winning message for Democrats and, frankly, for the American people.
In Texas this morning, state legislators kicked off a 30-day special session called by Republican Governor Greg Abbott. He's pressing them to pass a new conservative agenda, including an anti-trans bathroom bill and restrictions on abortion funding. If that effort is successful, Texas will become even more red. And a polarizing new real estate venture is banking on just that. Their target clients want to live in a politically homogenous conservative utopia, and they're willing to move across the country to find it. Nigel Dwara has more from North Texas.
So you kind of see the stone and brick facade, the kind of nice features. That's pretty common. In fact, you won't see a house in North Texas that's not brick.
We noticed that, yeah.
Tamir Barkin and his wife Sarah grew up about 30 miles north of LA, but they don't want to live there anymore.
Which one would be yours?
The Barkins are looking at homes in McKinney, a small city north of Dallas that's recently seen a construction boom. They want to be able to rely on a single income so Sarah can stay home and raise the kids. But they're also fed up. As conservatives, they're tired of being surrounded by liberals.
I guess we align with the political beliefs of everything conservative. The gun laws, taxes, abortion. I mean, and that's not the way California aligns. And so it's hard for us. Like when we read the news and everything, it's like, oh, it's kind of disheartening.
I do not promise all yards to be this big.
That's where Derek Baker comes in. He's a lead realtor with a new company called Conservative Move, which is grounded in one simple idea. If you're a conservative, then living in a conservative area means a happier and safer life.
They can actually, live out the American dream, buy a home.
And is that part of your pitch, that to tell them to come experience the American dream?
It is, absolutely. I mean, and we say this is not make-believe, I'm living it. I have a 5-bedroom, 4-bath on a third of an acre. I bought it 6 months ago for less than $400,000. That's $1 million house in most places in California.
Baker's a native Texan. He returned to his home state in 2011 after 25 years on Capitol Hill as a staffer for a number of Republican politicians. And he isn't just looking to help Republicans buy houses. He wants to make sure it's Republicans who are selling them, too.
We'll help any client, but when we want to have a real estate agent on our team, we want them to be able to talk our language. Are they conservative? Do they espouse the same beliefs, generally, beliefs that we do?
The idea of a for us, by us realty company came from founder Paul Chabot, who met Baker in Washington.
Conservativeness can't solve everything, but it is an ideology and a belief for a better way and a healthier way of living for a community.
Coming out of college as a sheriff's deputy, Chabot began a nomadic career. In the White House, working intelligence in Iraq, then home to California, where he twice ran for office on an anti-drug message that highlighted his career in law enforcement.
By holding one another accountable, there's no limit to what we can accomplish.
He moved his wife and 4 young children to McKinney in January after losing for a second time.
When we lost that election, this last go-around, it was a wake-up call. I mean, we realized that you can't help people who don't want to help themselves, so for us, it just made sense to leave. We feel like we're on vacation every day.
Chabot says the safe streets and top-notch schools drew them to McKinney. It's safe enough to leave the keys in your golf cart. There's no graffiti, no trash, and definitely no loud music. He told us he wished he moved here earlier, and that he hadn't wasted so much time trying to fix a broken system.
I think the liberal experiment is California. It is the canary in the coal mine for the rest of the country about what not to become.
Those who no longer recognize their home states are interested in Chabot's plan. He's working to close his first few deals and has already recruited realtors in other conservative states. Since launching the company in May, he says more than 1,000 prospective clients have called and written in.
Devon's, Massachusetts, a gentleman writes us, I'd like to own, but renting is just fine with me. I can move in October. I'm a veteran and live in a liberal hellhole. You have Fritz that writes, I've been a conservative Republican registered voter for decades in New York and cannot stand the liberal politics.
Political self-segregation has become increasingly common in the U.S. More than half of Americans live in a county that's overwhelmingly Democratic or overwhelmingly Republican, and Chabot thinks most people like it that way.
Look, I worked for both Clinton and Bush in the White House. I believe back then, Republicans and Democrats could get along, have a conversation. Today, we just don't even recognize each other.
Collin County is a Republican stronghold, but it's changing. It went to Romney in 2012, and by a smaller margin to Trump last year. George Fuller is McKinney's mayor. He's a longtime real estate developer and something of a local rock star.
Are you moonlighting as the mayor, or are you moonlighting as a guitar store owner?
Man, I'm all in as the mayor.
Fuller's a Republican, but he says he doesn't agree with Chabot's vision. He says McKinney isn't Pleasantville, and it's better that way.
As a mayor of this community that has seen both conservative and liberal constituents, boy, the power of them coming together is by far greater than any party individually.
So really the message for the mayor in this case is just to sort of open your arms as wide as possible.
Open your arms wide as possible. Let's forget about what party that you're in. Let's talk about this as a community. And I think if we did that on a grander level, on a state level, on a federal level, we'd be a better country as well.
Chabot sees it differently. He says his company encourages people to confront a divide that already exists and to choose a side.
What do you tell your friends in California when they say want to move out here?
I tell them it's a lot of like being in a bad relationship, that California is that bad relationship. And you might not realize how truly bad it is until you're out of it. There's a better life, a better way to live, and that's out here, or many other red states for that matter.
In the 10 years since Israel sealed its borders with the Hamas-run Gaza Strip, human intelligence has been crucial to its security operation. In Gaza, collaborating with Israel is an unforgivable betrayal and extremely dangerous. In May, 3 men were executed by Hamas for assisting Israel in the assassination of military chief Mazen Fuqaha. Fuqaha was shot at point-blank range with a gun fitted with a silencer. Previously, Israel has assassinated senior militants in Gaza from the air, but this was a brazen killing in the heart of the city. Hamas blamed Israel and its collaborators.
هاي أول صورة إلي وإله مع بعض طول السنين يعني تصورت أنا وياه وأمه هاي أول صورة أول ما إجا هون.
Naveen fell in love with her husband, Abdullah Nashar, online. But she lived in the West Bank and he lived in Gaza. It was 10 years before they were able to meet.
هاي الصورة اللي هون قبل ما ينفذوا حكم الإعدام بيوم بالليل ليلة يعني تاني يوم الصبح خلاص بدهم يعدموه.
Do you think he ever gave any information to Israel?
لا. No.
Abdullah was one of 3 men executed by Hamas for Fuqaha's death. His brothers believe Hamas executed the wrong man after torturing a confession out of him.
How was he the last time you saw him?
مش هبطلنا بقول له إيش اللي صار قال لي مش هقدر أحكي شيء بس كل اللي بحكي لك إياه إنه أنا مظلوم وأنا متت.
Why do you think they executed him?
بدهم يخلصوا هالقصة كيف ما كان.
بدهم يبينوا للجمهور وللمواطنين إنه في إنجاز وإنجازنا بالإعدام الثلاثة. طبعاً أكيد هيك يعني
فيلم الأكشن اللي عملوه.
In a slickly produced Hamas confession video, Abdullah says he collaborated with Israel so they'd let him travel to see Naveen.
تواصلت معي واحدة أثناء ما كنت مقدم للتسريح اسمها سهى قالت لي إحنا من حقوق الإنسان وراح نساعدك ونحل مشكلتك لأنه عندك منع. هذه اللحظة اللي ارتبطت يعني بلش الارتباط معاهم يعني اشتغلت.
Palestinians can only travel between Gaza and the West Bank with Israeli permission. In the process of trying to leave Gaza, many say they've been approached by Israeli intelligence officers offering permits to get healthcare or see their family in return for information. Collaborators are a major security problem for Hamas. But while Israel has control of Gaza's borders and the movement of its people, Hamas only has deterrence to offer.
هذه الساحة هي جزء من المقر الرئيسي لإدارة الشرطة الفلسطينية في قطاع غزة.
I understand this is where Abdullah Nashar was executed.
هنا تم تنفيذ أحكام الإعدام بحق الثلاثة ومن ضمنهم عبد الله النشار.
How many people are being held across the Gaza Strip on charges related to collaboration?
عقب اغتيال مازن فقهة تم تنفيذ حملة أمنية اعتقلنا خلالها 45 عميل للاحتلال الإسرائيلي، ولدينا أيضا عدد قليل قبلهم في السجن موقوف، وهو أصلا العدد الموجود المرتبطين مع الاحتلال الإسرائيلي في المجتمع الفلسطيني عدد قليل جدا جدا.
How can the Hamas authorities fight Palestinians who are being told they won't be able to get healthcare unless they give information to Israel?
الثقافة السائدة في مجتمعنا بأنه هذا عدو وهذا احتلال، لكن هناك البعض بالتأكيد من يسقط في وحل التخابر وهم فئة منبوذة، حتى العائلات تتبرأ من أبنائها الذين يسقطون في التخابر مع الاحتلال الإسرائيلي.
Across Gaza City and Hamas interrogation facility, we met Mahmoud, who is 4.5 years into an 8-year sentence for collaboration. Our meeting was observed by several Hamas security officials.
How was it that you were approached by Israel initially?
كنت متزوج داخل إسرائيل، قعدت فترة 9 سنوات. بعدها تم ترحيلي على قطاع غزة. تم التواصل مع محامي من داخل الخط الأخضر، أثبت إنه هذا المحامي المتواصل معه إنه ضابط مخابرات، دخل لي بإنه يعمل لي تسريح إنه أرجع على إسرائيل أزور أولادي أو إنه أطفالي يجوا عندي على قطاع غزة هان.
When you're talking to your family, what are you able to tell them about your life here?
بقدر أقول لهم إنه محبوس، إنه قضية زي هذه، لأنه إيش يعني إيش بيخزي هاي الشغلة. بقول لهم محبوس على مشكلة بس.
Even your wife must know why you're here?
لا لغاية ما بتعرف. يعني حابب أوصل رسالة للناس إنه يأخذوا العبرة من المساجين، من اللي زيي، وعدت كتير في شغلات وفيش نهائيا آخر شيء تخلى عني مباشرة.
Because of the threat posed by militants in Gaza to Israeli security, there is more electronic, satellite and cyber surveillance of this 140 square miles than almost any other part of the world. Reuven Berko is now retired, but for 10 years he ran collaborators in Gaza for the Israeli military.
What makes a good informer?
לאינפורמר טוב צריכה להיות קודם כל נגישות. אם הוא סוכן צמרת, כמו כאלה שיש לנו בתוך החמאס היום, הוא משפיע על עיצוב המציאות, הוא יכול גם להשפיע על אלמנטים אופרטיביים, how to strike to the target, ולא לפזר מאמצים בצדדים. הדבר השני שצריך להתקיים, זה שיהיה לו מניע לסייע. המניע יכול להיות מגוון רחב של צרכים, או חולשות, ולפעמים אפילו צריך לייצר לו מוטיבציה כזו.
In Palestine, it's considered the most shameful.
In what?
In Palestine.
I don't know this name, this word. Really? What Palestine?
In Gaza.
In Gaza.
To inform to Israel is extremely shameful. So what motivates people to do it?
שאנשים בונים, זה תהליך פסיכולוגי, שבו אנשים בונים לעצמם את ה-cover story שלהם. למה אני עושה משהו? איך אני עושה את זה אולי נגד איזשהו עיקרון שחונכתי עליו כל החיים? גם זה תפקיד של מפעיל חכם, לספק את הסולם שמוריד את האדם מחלומות ומסיפורים הירואיים אל איזשהו מערכת רציונלית שבה בן אדם מספר לעצמו למה זה חשוב מה שהוא עושה, איך הוא מנמק לעצמו באופן נכון את האופן שבו הוא עושה את מה שהוא עושה.
The reality is, if these people get caught, they'll be executed.
אנחנו לא עושים פעולות שהדה וג'יהאד. אם קורית תקלה, זה אחרי שעשינו את כל המאמצים למנוע אותה. לצערי, הם פוגעים באנשים חפים מפשע, כמו 3 האחרונים שהוצאו להורג בצורה מאוד ברוטלית.
Hamas told me that there are actually very few informers for Israel in Gaza, maybe tens.
אני שמח שזאת התשובה שקיבלת מחמאס. זה מעיד על כך שהמצב שלנו מצוין. אני הייתי מעדיף שהם יחשבו שאין סוכנים ישראלים בכלל בשורות שלהם, ושלא יגידו שיש מעט.
As long as the conflict continues, as long as Israel recruits Palestinian collaborators and Hamas tries to eliminate them. There will be stories like Naveen and Abdullah's.
What is your opinion of the people in Palestine, particularly in Gaza, who do provide information for Israel for whatever reason?
قاعد في بلد محتل، وهي البلد المحتل يعني إنه أنت قاعد تعطي عدوك معلومات. إشي غلط كبير يعني. هو هذا لما بده يتعامل مع اليهود من إيش راح يتعامل مع اليهود؟ من الضغط اللي موجود عنده. لا في حياة ولا في عيشة ولا في ممكن في ناس منهم مش قادرين ياكلوا.
Were you able to speak to him?
طبعا بطلوع الرحلة سمحوا له إنه يحكي معي.
What did he say to you in that last phone call?
ما تعيطيش وما تزعليش، يعني أنا انظلمت وراضي بالظلم اللي الله يعني كتب لي إياه، والحمد لله، وضلك قولي يا رب بس.
The National Archives is planning to let the CIA destroy millions of files documenting how the agency has handled leaks. It's part of a routine process for sorting and deleting records that have passed their expiration date. But we don't have any idea what exactly is in the CIA files, so we don't know what's being destroyed. And sometimes the agency's destruction of files has resulted in crucial evidence being lost to history. Just last month, for example, a State Department report revealed formerly classified cables showing that the CIA almost called off the 1953 coup in Iran, a move that would have changed the course of the modern Middle East. But the report also acknowledged that a number of related files had been destroyed back in the 1960s, in a process approved at the time by the National Archives. Watchdogs say this proves that the archive system isn't foolproof. They also point to the CIA's long track record of deleting evidence of programs, like LSD testing and enhanced interrogation. The agency says the leak-related documents it's planning to get rid of this time around are either worthless or available elsewhere. Stephen Aftergood says 90% of paperwork generated by the government is of no research value.
The federal government generates mountain ranges of data, and the National Archives can't preserve everything. It's like a roadmap of one-to-one scale. It's overwhelming. So what they try to do is identify material of enduring historical value and preserve that. But if you try to preserve everything, then you generate chaos.
This is cool.
I wonder if Jack and Diane ever made it after the drums and the guitars all faded. What's the best they could do good enough? Or did the heartland just swallow them up?
Who is this?
Old Dominion.
Isn't that a beer?
I'll take an Old Dominion, please.
Country's just gotten weird, but there are people that are turning it around.
It's like if the CEOs at Applebee's started a band.
Nice.
Yeah. Pretty voice.
Who's this?
Japanese breakfast.
When I first heard it, I was thinking, drugs are good. It's just very sort of floating and pretty, and her voice is a good voice. Drugs are good. Cool. Washed out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Washed out. Reminded me of 90s Pet Shop Boys.
Yeah, it had that vibe to it. It reminded me of sort of riding on a school bus. That's a good thing.
When I was just a little boy like you, I wanted to do things the big boys do. Wherever they went, they would.
Very familiar sounding.
Is that the man?
It's Chuck Berry.
Yeah. It's crazy. To be able to use that format and he still brought something to it that I hadn't heard before.
When I was 18 years old, me and my friend Ted saw Chuck Berry in Las Vegas. He invited us on stage to sing with him until I put my arm around him. He worked in the lyrics, hey, we don't play. In other words, get your fucking hand off me type of thing. I was just kind of like, me Chuck Berry. And that's the first and last time I ever did anything like that to anybody again. I learned my lesson.
That's Vice News Tonight for Tuesday, July 18th.